You can forget a lot of things, Foster Care Nation, but never forget this. You're listening to Unparalleled Studios.
I signal.
Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey.
Strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hello and welcome back to Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey with Jason. And like before, many times, no Amanda today. She's chasing Foster, or no. Well, somebody's got an appointment today, and she's out taking care of that. And so today you've got me and Mr. Peter Mutabazi. I normally ask how to pronounce the name before we start recording. Hopefully I got that close, Peter. Am I close?
Yes, you got it right. Mutabazi, the way it looks.
Excellent. I love names that are the way they look, especially when they have some connections there that I go, I'm not certain if that's pronounced exactly that way. So I'm glad I got it right. Peter is the author of the book Now I Am Known that's releasing in August. And you can find him over his website at nowimknown.com. And Peter, I saw you in a couple of places online on some news stories and whatnot. And it turns out you have a, we'll say, unconventional story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the foster care / adoption type place and what your story is, man?
Well, yes, absolutely. My story is, that I was born and raised in Uganda. I grew up in a small little village where life was miserable. I mean, miserable. We were as poor as it gets. Think about, like, my mom could not afford a meal for a day, So, and that meal was, item of beans and potatoes, and we could not afford two. So we could only eat one every other day, Life was miserable. Like, I had to grow even those beans. I had to go fetch water 3 to 4 miles away. So for me, life was just so miserable on the poverty level, And then at the age of 4, I began to realize that my dad was different, that my dad was abusive in every shape, form you could imagine. And more, I think mostly on how he treated my mom. It's sad when you have one parent that loves you so much, but at the same time, to see the abuse that she got, and I could not protect her. So that was my world of literally hopelessness, world of no dreams, no hope, nothing at all. But you grew up, woke up in the morning and thought, do I have the next day? And that was my life. Well, at the age of 10, I thought, look, rather than let my dad take my own life, I'm going to run away. So I went to the bus station and I asked the lady which bus went the farthest. And as soon as she pointed to that bus, I'd go to that bus and I'd run away. I had never been 20 miles away. I went 500 miles away, and I ended up in Kampala, and I became a street kid. So that is really more of my childhood, that life was just so miserable in every way, shape, form.
Wow. I mean, just wow, dude. That's a story. Number one, I need you to tell my kids how good they have it, because they think life is horrible if they don't have any Wi-Fi. They think that's abuse, or if I don't have what they want, the answer to the question, like the one who just came through my office trying to ask me questions, even though I told him not to come in here. And that's almost like horrible abuse. But man, you have a story that my parents would have liked me to hear at a young age to understand how good we have it. And I think a lot of times, here in the U.S., and you probably have the unique perspective to verify this, kids here don't, mostly, for the most part, most kids here don't know what really hard times are.
Yes, I would say absolutely that they don't understand, but also sometimes I think we cannot blame them, because that they're born in an era and an area where we parents do everything we can to protect them. Sometimes, yes, I get to fault myself, if my kids don't understand, but I've been fortunate to be able to say, all I ask for you is to remove the dishes from the dishwasher to where they need to be, or put the dishwasher. And I would say, hey, I had to walk 3 miles to just get water to clean those dishes. So me asking you, it's really something small, and you should be privileged that you didn't have to walk 7 miles away, back and forth. That I try to use them as teachable moments, but at the same time, they will never be in Africa. They will never go to where I was born, but somehow to always remind them on how good it is by comparing my own journey to their journey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have to ask this question too. You mentioned that your father was not exactly what you would call a kind human in your life. Did you ever work any of that out? How did you heal that father wound, if you will?
Well, it took a while, this is how it happened. So, I had a dad. My dad never said anything positive towards me, no matter what I did, no matter what I wanted to show him. He always had the negative, I didn't perform well in school. This is what I had from him every day. You never amount to anything. I wish you were never born so I didn't have to feed you. That's what I had every day, But as a street kid, when a stranger really saw me, I had been on the street for about 4.5 years, and the stranger saw me and said, "Look, man, I have fed you for 1.5 years. Would you love to go to school?" And along the way, he truly took me to school and changed my life. But I think he also showed me the example of what a father should be. I think seeing how he lived his life, seeing how he treated his kids, seeing the passion he had, look at me. I was a street kid, dirty thief, but he saw the best in me and my lowest, that he really wanted the best for me. That once I got that, once I understood that, now I really began to really look at my own dad, that, okay, maybe he didn't have an example. Maybe I don't know, he had it the wrong way. And I think I wanted to show him what a father ought to be. So, and I knew I had to forgive him. I knew I truly had to forgive him. So I had to walk back home, my village, and I said, look, by then I was in high school. I was like, look, you wanted you wanted the worst for me, but well, God used it for good, that I am at the right place, And I think that's what really helped me forgive him, to see that a stranger had loved me so much that I did not want my dad's behavior or abuse to ruin my future, because he had shown me what a future ought to be. And I didn't want the anger, the hatred towards my dad to ruin my future. So that's why I had to go back and forgive him in some way.
Now, I got to ask, because the other side of that, I'm thinking, you mentioned, that your mom was the kind influence in your childhood. And when you hopped on that bus and took off, I mean, I can only imagine, through my own experience with my family, that had to have been something pretty big for her to figure out how to deal with. What was that like for her?
Yes. I to this day, I'm guilty, because she was pregnant when I left. Because of disappearing or running away, she lost a child. She had a miscarriage. So sometimes I think I have that guilt that me running away caused her to lose the child, but I also knew that she loved me, but also I knew that there's no way I could protect her in some way. And there was nothing against her that I was, I knew my mom did everything she can. The same abuse I got, the same she got, but also I knew that she had more kids to take care of, that not like I was a burden, but I thought maybe that would be a little bit easier as a 10-year-old. That's what I was thinking. But yes, I think it left a mark on her. But also, it kind of really gave her hope after she knew that I was okay and I'd gone to school and I was doing well.
So did you keep a connection with your parents on through your life as you got older?
Yes, absolutely. I'm the oldest of 5. So I realized that I had a part to play. So I had gone to school, I had gone to university as well. So I wanted to change my siblings' life. I knew I could not take them away, but I knew I can give them an education. So I pursued them to go to school, and they all went to school and went to university. But also I loved my mom. I wanted to protect my mom as well. So I needed to provide for her. So that meant that I had to go back. So absolutely, I've been in touch with them to this day. I love them. They're doing well, but they're doing well because someone was kind to me. They're doing well because someone saw the best in me. They're doing well because someone made me an example for my brothers to say, if Peter can do it, I think we can do it as well.
Yeah. Now, what we've got you as a high school kid in Uganda. How did you make the leap across the ocean and end up in the U.S.?
Oh, yes. So this man, when they took me in, he finally, also introduced me to his family. So then I began staying with his family. And their family really used words of kindness, words of affirmation to encourage me every day. They would tell me, Peter, you matter, you're chosen, you're a gift to us. And the more I had those kind of words and affirmation, the more it helped me to go back and do well in school. So I finished school in Uganda, I went to university, and then I got a scholarship to go study in England. And then I went back to Uganda, and then I got a scholarship to come to study in the United States. Again, through the kindness of one. It's amazing how when you help or when you intervene in someone's life, on how far it goes. For me, it took me to England, and that's how I came to the US as a student.
Wow. Well, no offense, dude, but you don't look like you're necessarily still a student at university anymore.
No, I'm now an old parent, yes, the kids have taken a toll on my beard.
Well, fortunately, they've only gotten a few of mine starting to gray out. So I'm just going to go ahead and be thankful that it hasn't gone full gray yet.
Right.
Because they're trying. They're trying. So you got to the States, and what kind of work do you do here?
So when I came to the United States, I went to school, and then I worked for Compassion International for 11 years. And then once I became a foster dad, I moved to Oklahoma. And then now I work for World Vision. As you know, they advocate for children all over the world. And I wanted to do both. I wanted to advocate for kids here in the United States, as well as advocate for children that are in the same position as I am in developing countries.
Wow, dude, you've got you've got quite the plate full of things you got going on there. So what made you decide to get into foster care? Because, I mean, you're a single guy, right?
Yes, I'm single. Well, I think when I came to the United States, I think my first time, I really struggled with my faith. I saw how much food was thrown away. I saw just so much of everything. And I thought, God, do you love us the same way? Like, do you truly love us? That I come from a village where kids died because of lack of beans and potatoes. And people here have so much to throw away, But as I really struggled with that, I began also to really think of myself like, God, you bless me, Then I'll visit families, and then I'll see they have 7-bedroom house, but there's only 2 people. And I'm wondering, what do you use the others for? I come from a place where most families live in a house as big as the average car garage here in the United States. And you'll find there are 7 to 12 families that live in there. And I thought, man, that's a waste of space, And I think as I began to really travel and see, I was also convicted by Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much is required. I was like, man, I have been given so much. I need to do something. And then once I knew about foster care, well, before the foster care, I traveled all over the world. I've been to 101 countries. And I would travel with families that were adopting either in Ethiopia, in China, in Uganda. But I'd never seen a Black person that was adopting or was traveling. They were always white Caucasian families, and they were always married. So I thought, well, if you're male and you're single, there's no way, So when I walked into the foster care system, I said, hey, I would like to mentor teenagers. Is there a way I could? Because I knew I had time. I knew I could do it at least once a week. And the social worker said, hey, have you ever thought of being a foster dad? And I said, well, I don't think I qualify. I'm not married. She's like, no, you can be a foster dad as a single man. I was like, okay, where do I sign up? Literally, I did not leave that office until I signed up. So I signed up because I've always wanted to be a dad. I think this family that took me in had shown me what a truly a father should be. And I think also I understood the foster care kid because I was the kid who was unwanted. I was the kid who was unloved. I was the kid who had every trauma you could think of, that I was abused in every shape, form, but yet someone took care of me. Yes, someone loved me without looking at my trauma, but saw me as a human being and changed my life. And so I knew that most kids have walked the same walk, that I wanted to go there. I wanted to be with them and truly be able to use my past in order to truly encourage them as well. That, hey, I was one of you. I know what you feel. But someone changed my life. And I thought it was the best way to pay it back. I mean, to pay it forward, because he truly changed my life. And as soon as I became a foster dad, I was like, man, this is my calling. So it's been really a joy. I've had 24 kids. I have 4 now. I've adopted 1, and I'm in the process of adopting 3 more. So it's truly been a joy. a game changer as well.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. You mentioned, the social worker saying you absolutely can be a foster dad. I can see that because they're dying for parents, quite frankly, for foster parents to come in and help them out. And, I think it's do you know who Meg Meeker is, the author?
Yes.
Okay. Meg Meeker was speaking at an event that I was at, I believe it was last year. And that's one of the things that was mentioned is if you want to turn this country around, put a strong father on every block. Put one on every block. Go into the urban neighborhoods where it's a primarily black community and put a strong black father in there. Go into the areas with, the Latino communities and put a strong Latino father in there and watch it change. Watch how the changes just show up because that's what most of these kids need is a father because they have a story, although it doesn't involve, a lack of beans and potatoes necessarily for them a lot of times. And sometimes it does, but they grew up in these worlds where there's no strong male role model for the young men. And we can see what that's creating in some of our communities today.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I've had 24 kids, but I cannot remember one of them saying, I wish we had a mom. None at all has ever said, I wish we had a mom, because they've always wanted a dad, they've always wanted a dad. And two, the behaviors have changed. Sometimes I'll have kids who, they're not doing well in daycare. They're being from one end to the other. And as soon as they come to me, they're like, what changed? Like something changed. I'm like, it's weird, but they just wanted a dad. Like I think finding a dad, knowing that they have a place to go back home, someone to say it's gonna be okay. I've got two teenagers. I can truly say as well that really their lives have changed because they have been looking for someone that would understand them. I'm not saying moms don't. Moms do, absolutely, but I think 90% of the time they are with moms, but without a dad. And we can wrestle. I can tell you every night they want to compete who can put me down. And it's amazing, just that wrestling, that just small part of everyday life, how it truly changes their lives, that they can call at school when things are tough and say, what do I do? And I say, son, we'll walk it through. And I can say, yes, she's right. She is absolutely right, And I think maybe that's what changed for me as well, to have a large following, because there's less men. I was in Oklahoma and I was the only male in the entire state that was a foster dad. So there's a great need for sure to truly be a spokesperson and encourage other men. The other part, I think we've been told men like, oh, we go work and come home and provide. Like, yes and no. Yes, we can work. Yes, but I think we also can truly be tender and caring to our little ones and be there as moms do. I don't think there's a role for here and role for the other one, but I think most kids are looking for the father role, the dad, the other father.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the other father, you had mentioned a couple times your faith and how that has affected your choices. So did you grow up with a faith instilled in you, or is that something you found later in life?
Later in life. I think I struggled with hatred towards my dad. I think faith for me didn't make sense. The Bible says, forgive those who wronged you. I'm like, no. There are some people we should forgive, there are others we should not. And that includes my dad. So I think for me, I struggled with the requirements. And I think I didn't want to live both worlds of hatred towards my dad and then somehow be a believer. I could take one, And I think until I forgave my dad, then it was a little easier for me to truly have that faith that, that will carry me through the good and the bad. And also too, I think that really helped me to let go of the anger towards my dad. And I needed that.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. It's, I've talked to a lot of men, and for all the listeners who've heard this podcast for very long, I don't get through too many episodes without mentioning that I'm in a dad's group online. And that's just such a common theme that guys come in there and talk about. As fathers themselves, they struggle with those issues they had in their own childhood with their own biological fathers, whether they were absent fathers or whether they were, abusive in some way or another. And it's just such an important thing to realize that man, we we write that whole idea of what a father is on the hearts of our children. And, Amanda, my wife, she has, it's a struggle that she's always had because she did not have a healthy father relationship in her childhood. She had just two interactions really in her lifetime with her biological dad, and they are not good stories. Wow. They were really, really horrible stories. And so for her, that's made the idea of a faith journey really difficult, and she's had to struggle through that. So I'm glad to see that you managed to get to the other side of that and realize that, like, this is not something that you can just blame everything over here and walk in that hatred and stay there because it's no good for you. In the long run, it's horrible for you, and it hurts you, and it keeps you from being able to help others. And to see what you've done with that is just amazing.
Right. The example, I think for this man to show me the example of what a father ought to be, or what unconditional love. Like I understood that. But then the other side, I understood that holding on hatred, like sometimes I think holding on what people have done for us is giving a way to still ruin our lives in the future. And I didn't want that. Like I really did not want my dad to rule for the next hour in my life, but I knew I had to let it go. The best way was to forgive him. The best way was also to look at what he did towards me and my mom and use it as a foundation to better myself, to better myself. It's Napoleon. And I think I loved history. Napoleon said, it's those that have that fight not to lose what they have. Like I already knew what a good dad is. I already knew what a good future proof is. Like I did not want the past to ruin it. Like I didn't want what I know, what I went through to somehow dictate my future as well. So for me, that was the easiest way. But also too, the true way, I think even with my foster kids, to see them struggle, with the neglect or unloved by their own parents, but to say, I hear you, I understand. But if you keep that and harbor that, it's really, in some way, it's going to ruin your future because you're letting still mom and dad's bad behaviors or decisions kind of ruin your own, So is that helpful, in some way you're letting them take over your future as well.
Absolutely. One of the things that we had some training around it before we became foster parents, but I'm just going to say not enough. And I don't know if there is enough training around this even available in the world. But something that was a real struggle for us when we first started was we had this crazy idea that, where love is an important part of this, right? You gotta care about these kids. You gotta love them, like actually love them. But that's not always enough to fix all the problems they have, right? It's almost never enough to fix all the problems. Did you run up against many different diagnoses or mental struggles, different things like that you had to learn how to deal with? The abuse, maybe. I think, so this happened when I was 8. I was about 8, 9. My dad had beat the crap of me, and then he'd send me to go fetch water. And so I was, mad and just sulking. But on the way to get water, on the way back, I saw him. He was at the bar singing and dancing and laughing with his friends. So then I looked at myself, I said, wait a minute, for the last 6 hours, I've been mad, but he's a man I'm mad at who just really forgot the moment he left, and I was like, wait a minute, that I should know. And so quickly I go to learn how to keep him out of my mind, that anything he does, that we can always make sure that we keep physical from emotional. So me and my siblings would sit down and plan, like, we know we're gonna get a beating tonight, so let's gonna count, see who cries the earliest or who's gonna not cry. So we made into the abuse into a joke for us, like a play, but in some way we're trying to somehow not to let it really get into ourselves, So the same way, once I got on the streets of Kampala, if it was sexual, if it was abuse in every shape form, like I learned how to just turn off my brain, like turn off my mind and say, that's physical, but I'm not going to let you get into my mental, And I think that really helped me
to figure out and how to let it go, and not how to let what was going on in some way mentally get to me. Like I train my brain to just know the physical is different from my emotional, and if I can keep those different, then I'll be okay, you know. But in so doing, you know, of course, I learned the hard way to this point too. It's really hard. You learn the mechanism of how to not let things get to you. So trust is not easy for me. Like trusting someone, not easy. Or someone being kind to me, because kindness came with abuse as well. So when someone is kind, I'm asking, what do you want? You know, rather than embrace that as like, oh, that's really cool that someone is kind, you know, but rather I go into the question mode, you know. So there are some things that I tried so hard to run away from or to avoid, but at the same time, that, you know, the after effects of that is different as an adult, you know, that they get to affect me in a different way, you know. And as Africans as well, like there's a different level of understanding misery that's all we knew. Think about, like, everyone in my village was poor, you know. Everyone were on the streets of Kampala were all street kids. We all scavenged into garbage with animals. It wasn't accepting what was there, but it's all we knew, you know. So there wasn't a level of, oh, I wish there was a better life here. It's all we knew, and so it was norm as well, you know. That it didn't affect me as it should had I gone back maybe to where I am right now, you know. So there's a different level of, you know, abuse is all you knew, abuse is all you understood, but as an adult, it's affecting me differently in some way. And remember, I was born during Idi Amin. You know, think about government-wise, military-wise, like everything was bad, you know? So when you learn to condition to live in that nature, in that environment, you know, I think there was, I don't know, there was a level of how you had to check your mental capacity, how you just, you know, this was normal. It's nothing I did or nothing I created that I had to really think about it often.
Wow. You mentioned being a single black male wanting to foster kids in Oklahoma, and lest I sound like I'm singling out Oklahoma here, because, you know, there's something necessarily wrong with that. I'm from Missouri, and trust me, we have our fair share of people here who would not be very welcoming to that idea either. Did you ever have any struggles around that, you know, race or anything like that was a problem with people that you had to deal with?
In Oklahoma?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, I think at first I was shocked, you know, that, you know, first of all, when I went in the foster care system, I thought the most at disadvantage were Hispanic, African American, and Native American. I just didn't think about the Caucasian in that sense, you know. So the first, you know, I think my second child was as blonde as you can go, and I was like, wait, who's this kid? I think you're in the wrong house. And then I found out, like, they were coming to my house, and that's when I began to realize, like, oh, abuse doesn't know color, abuse doesn't know race, abuse just, it's abuse. We've seen wealthy families that kids have been taken away for the same reason. And so that helped me to understand the level of how far and who it affects. So then I embraced every child. So, and I knew my calling. So even, I mean, we've been stopped, I don't know, 7 times, 8 times by the police, but I've come to learn to say, I'll give you what you need for, but I will make sure that I don't make a sin, or I don't make that take away my joy of wanting to be a foster dad. You know, everywhere I pick my kids are white for sure, but everywhere I go, they're like, what do you need? Are those your kids? Are you sure? You know, yesterday we were at Costco, and my kid, you know, Costco, you have to, you know, if they're testing food, the parents have to be there. Mm-hmm. So my kids wanted to test food, and this lady's like, no, guys, he told my kids, like, hey, go get your parents, you know, before I give you food. And all my kids at the same time, they said, but he's right here. What do you say I should go get my parents? Right, standing right here, you know. So I have come to learn that, you know, but too, that we are rare, you know. I think I have seen hundreds of families that are Caucasian that have adopted, you know, a black kid, but it's rare to see the other way around, you know, where black fathers have adopted white kids. That's rare. That I understand that, yes, I'm gonna cause people to kind of like, wait a minute, what's going here? Because it's unfamiliar, but also to know that that's my call to truly also change the narrative, to truly show that we dads can be good dads as Black dads, but two, that me as a Black dad too, I can be a good dad to any child that God brings to my home, and I am that good dad to them. But also to change the story that they haven't seen, I think, and sometimes I don't blame people because if you've never seen our family, you're gonna wonder what's going on, But at the same time, truly wanting to be that example, change the narratives of my community here in the United States, in my county. But at the same time, when I get on that plane, when people ask where your parents, my kids get mad. They're like, he just scanned my boarding pass. What do you want? But in some ways to also show them like, hey, he's how everyone that looks like me, he's how they are treated. And I hope you never get to treat someone like someone treats your dad. So it's been really nice to educate my kids, but at the same time, really try to change the narrative that dads, we can be good dads, and especially Black dads as well.
Oh yeah. We have a very blended family, if you will, when you look at us, if you see we've got a family picture over there, and it looks like you pulled a random collection of folks off the side of the street and said, here, we're going to do a family photo. And because, my wife, her maiden name is McClanahan, and she is just as Irish as that sounds. And she fits the stereotypes. She makes paper look tan. She's so stinking white and, red hair. And then I have a couple kids that look just like her, very either dark blonde or red hair and very pale skin. And then we've got a couple mixed kids that we have adopted. And I'm fortunate enough I have that ambiguously brown look that nobody knows exactly what I am when they see me, and they just assume those are my kids. But Then from time to time, we'll have kids like when we had baby Carl staying with us, and baby Carl was as Black as you could possibly be. I mean, he was the darkest skinned little dude I've ever met in my life. And so when we would walk in places, it would confuse people because we had kids who fit all the color profiles in the rainbow practically. And my favorite was there was a little Chinese restaurant we used to frequent. It was just a little kind of mom and pop place. And the gal who always ran it up front, she was a super nice lady. And when we walked in after we'd gotten baby Carl, and he was just so ridiculously darker than me, and with my super pale wife sitting beside me, and she walks over, and he was a cute baby. He was a happy baby. So he's always smiling, and she's, oh, he's so cute. And then she looks at him, she looks at me, she says to me, he looks just like you. And it was all I could do not to laugh, because I'm like, he doesn't look anything like me at all. Like the darkest black hair on my head looks pale compared to him. And there's no way that he came from somebody with my, kind of brownish look and my wife's super white look, but she didn't know how else to handle it. She didn't know what else to say. And in that moment, it was just politeness. And that's what we gave back to her, because that's what she was trying. She was trying to be polite. And so it confuses some people sometimes. But, I think that the big part is what you're talking about. We choose how to respond to that, and we teach our kids how to respond to this kind of stuff. And we teach the community around us what that means when we walk in and look different, and then treat them with kindness, regardless of how they treat us.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Like, be the example. I think, my first parents were the best example that, I didn't speak their language, but they always saw the best in me, that I can do the same. And two, like, I think for me, who has, half a million followers on social media, how negative people can be. Like, there are some people who just don't like to see something good, and make sure that I don't give it an ear, that I do what I do best, and let the rest kind of, fly by. People have opinions, on what they think of me, but to make sure that I can be the example. But I think more importantly, as I told you how I avoided abuse from my dad by removing physical from emotional, the same, like I try to just not entertain, but in some way, just do what I do best, But two, I wanted to show empathy. I think for me, my kids are Caucasian. That I'm not a protester. I don't go out and protest, but I let my life be the protest on how I live my life. If I can have empathy to kids who don't look like me, that I hope someone will have empathy towards me the same way, the same way that I get to see my kids in they're my favorite human beings, that I love them to death, that someone who sees us can say, man, if that guy loves their kids the way he does, I should have respect for him, or try to love others that don't necessarily look like me the same way.
Yeah, that's exactly it right there, man. You hit the nail on the head, because the best thing we can do is to show people how we would like them to have responded to us. We had an instance where we walked into to a little restaurant. It's in a very, very, very rural community in Missouri, and it's still a sundown town, from what I understand. It's a very racially not diverse area, and they don't take kindly to anybody who's not completely white being in their town after dark. So it's I know that about the town now. I did not know that when we went up there, and with that was when we had baby Carl with us, and he was going up. That town houses a women's correctional facility here in Missouri, where his mom was serving some time, and we had gone up there so she could have a visit with him. And when we walked in the restaurant, they immediately put us in the back room where nobody was. The lights were out. The chairs were still on the table. Like, she had to open up the back room and stick us in the back room. People stood up and walked out of the restaurant. And I was like, this is interesting. I don't like the way this feels. And,
right.
And so by the time we left, I had to decide how to handle that. I had to decide, how I was going to respond. And I eventually came to, I didn't like the answer, but God kind of told me what I needed to do was I needed to show her that this could be a good thing. We might not look conventional to you, but we can still be an amazing thing in this world. And so I said, you know what? We're in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere, and she's probably gotten, $1, $2 tips all day long. So we're going to leave her a tip that's going to be, half the price of the meal. And we're just going to, sit here and eat our food and then leave a nice tip, so that when all those people come back the next day, because it was one of those towns, like, nobody's coming through there for like traffic going on vacation. If you were there, you probably lived in the area, and you're probably there having your coffee and breakfast every morning. And
Right.
So when they came back the next morning to say something about us to her, I hope she was able to look at them and say, hey, they left me a better tip than any of you fools ever did, and just to change the heart of one person, just one person, so that if she had any of that thought process in her own head, it had to challenge that and say, hey, yes, they were different, but they were still good people. And that's all we can do.
Absolutely. I like that example, because I had one kid, Caucasian kid, and I had him for about a year. And his parents didn't like me at first, but later they warmed up to me, and then they really fell in love with me. But here's what they said. They said, all my life, I've been told Black people are not good people. But when our 3 kids needed a place, there was only one person that took them, and that was you, And that was you. Like, of all people we thought could come in and step in, it was a Black man that took in our kids and loved them and gave them the best. And in some way, they were telling me, it's amazing, what you've done for kids, because it changed how we view the world as well, on what we've been told about you, but yet your kindness and how you love our kids has truly changed the way we think, So for me, that was probably one of the best comment I ever heard from a parent, saying, yes, of all people who say they care, no one took in my kids, but you did, And I think that's the best example I like how you did, like, of all people who came in to say, wait a minute, but they treated me better than anyone else. And that's been my whole goal in life, that I treat you the best, that the next one, you say, wait a minute, what? Even the police, every time they stop us, they always come back and apologize. They're like, look, it's our job to follow up when someone calls, but also we feel sad that someone would call you for what you do. Like, it's sad. And for me to not have a bad attitude towards them, but always we travel with paperwork. As soon as they stop us, we know what to pull and show, but at the same time, I understand that they do their job, that they're not there to look for me, but someone called, and we know there are bad people who take kids, who do bad things, but at the same time, to recognize that, they're not the bad guys, that person who made a phone call.
So what part of the country do you live in right now?
So we live in Charlotte, North Carolina. We live in the South. So I've seen it all. I have had it all. Yes, we live in North Carolina, Charlotte.
Okay, yeah. So you probably still see a bit of that. I know that not all of the South has assimilated to the beliefs that they probably should have since somewhere around the Civil War and gotten over all that craziness. So I'm certain you have seen your fair share of it. So I think it's amazing that you came from such a difficult place, did amazing things to end up where you're at, and then still are moving towards helping others and spreading love to other people, as opposed to all the negative stuff that you can reach towards really easily.
Yes, absolutely. And too, but I'm also learning too to love on their parents. Like, I think every time I was on the streets of Kampala, everyone was like, what a mother, but they didn't know what my mom had to go through. That I think I've learned to really love, to love their parents unconditionally and to bridge the gap. I've had 24 kids, and I think 12 of them have gone, unified with their parents. And to learn both worlds of the strange world we come from, and to not judge, but rather to embrace them. I mean, I'm a foster dad. I had 6 weeks of school. I have every resource you could think of. I have, other foster parents that can help me when I need help. I was given all the resources, but to some of these moms, there's no resource I have, And so for me to go in and say you should treat your kids and love your kids this way, that's unfair. That's unfair. That I'm learning to love on them and bridge the gap so they can have their kids back, like my mom was in the same position.
That's one of the things, in foster care, the primary goal is reunification with the parents whenever possible. And that one's hard. Let's be honest. Sometimes that one's hard. Sometimes it's harder than others. There's been, there's been some situations we've had, one particular kiddo that, mom got up when the baby was born and she left the hospital and she never came back. Right. And you go, how do you do that? That's super easy to be judgmental on those people really fast. What's not easy to do is to look at that and go, okay, what causes a person to be that way? How can we help there? How can we, help her create a bond with a child that's going to last a lifetime? In that particular case, well, they've got to show up there's got to be some way to connect to be able to do that. And unfortunately, that's not been something that we've had an ability to do at this point. I can't help a mom who's gone in the wind and just disappeared, but I need to be able to do that if that opportunity shows up, even though that's friggin' hard.
Right.
So, Peter, you sound like you have faced many, many, many hard things to get where you're at, and somehow or another you still are just reaching out to help other people at every turn, and that's inspiring, dude. That's something we don't get to see.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, how do I say, when you've been there, when you've been rescued, when you've been given second chance, when you've been at your lowest, seen someone just saw the best in you, it's hard not. It's like I won $100 million for me to treat others like giving $100 back. That's how I look at it. Like, it's just, it's like, how can I not give back? Or how can I not use what I've been blessed to truly be there for others? That's kind of how I don't know, that's how I interpret my world, again, to whom much is given, much is required. And I think maybe for me, it's difficult to live in the United States to see, like, man, you can have so much, but at the end of the day, what's your legacy? My foster parents, they always say, Peter, my legacy is my deathbed, that I will have kids come and say, you changed my life. That on my final day on a funeral, that I'll have families and friends who say, man, you touched my life, And I think that really helped me, that Yes, I don't want to own 100 homes that my funeral date, they'll say he had so many homes, he had so many cars, nice cars. I don't know. I think for me, I want to have a legacy that I changed a life because someone changed my life as well. But also that it is my job, it is my duty. It's not someone else. I like what you said at the beginning. You said it is our community, it's our job. But also the example you use saying, if we want a healthy kid, if we want a healthy community, men ought to be in the community, ought to be on that street, ought to be on that corner. And it's true. For me, that man was there for me. He came on the streets of Kampala where no one wanted to be and changed a life. There were more than 1,000 kids on the streets. He didn't take them all, but he changed one. And I think for me too, that goal to say, I can't change them all. There's 500,000 kids almost in foster care. I know I can't change them all, but I know I can change what I can. Right now I have 4, and that's my blessing, to see what I've been given and to see how much I can use that to change another person's life. It's the greatest legacy, I would say.
You mentioned that legacy word, and that's a big one. That's something that in the dads group that I'm in, we talk about a lot. And here's what I know. I know that 100 years from now, the world will be different because I lived in it. And my life is just the story of how it will be different. That's it. It will be different. I promise you. A legacy to me is just like the wake behind a boat. You don't get to choose whether or not you leave it. You just get to choose what it looks like. You get to shape it. And if you're intentional about that, man, you can change the world. You will change the world, and you'll change it for the better if you're intentional.
Absolutely. And that's why I chose to write my book as well. Of course, it was really ugly going back to my childhood. There's some things I thought I had locked away and I would never have to revisit, but writing a book, I needed to go there. But through the process, I knew that going back is really also taking someone how far I've gone. People see me as a dad. They're like, man, how do you do it? And I wanted them to go back and see what path I had to go through to get where I am, what things I had to overcome, in order to be a dad. But also I wanted to encourage people that our past should not define who we are, on how I beat the odds, on how from my childhood to a street kid and being hopeless, but along the way, how I found hope, and how that encouraged me that maybe they can have a glimpse of my journey and be able to say, if Peter can go this far, man, I got something to offer in the world, for sure.
Well, Peter, you're going to be an inspiration to many people, and I just want to thank you for coming on here and telling your story today, because I am certain you're going to inspire more people. And your book it comes out in, August, depending on when you listen to this podcast, it comes out in August of 2022, correct?
Correct. Yes, it comes in August, but it's ready for pre-order. So even if you want to order it now, you can do so. But it comes August 30th, 2022.
All right, August 30th in 2022. So go out to the website is nowimknown.com, right?
Yes. Or you can go to any website, any bookstore in the world, and you'll be able to book that, book the book, Now I'm Known, and anywhere in the world as well. So, which is a blessing.
Awesome. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And the internet now has made it so easy for us to find that stuff and do it from the comfort of your own home. And it will just show up on your doorstep when it's time. And that is amazing. So I'm excited to see that story come out and see just how much further your story can move out across this world and change lives of the people, not only people that the people who see you in your community, but the people who are just in the world who will never know you personally. And you can still change your life.
Absolutely, yes. I like what one pastor said. He said, I can do to one what I would wish to do to many.
That's it. I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for your time and your story.
Thank you so much, Jason, for having me. What a blessing.
Okay, Foster Care Nation, thank you for listening to Peter's story. Now take his knowledge and wisdom to heart so you can create love and healing in your family and community. Be sure to come back next week. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you'd like to share your story as a guest, you can reach us at jason@fostercarenation.com. You can connect with other like-minded people on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. And don't forget, we have a Patreon account where you can support our mission for as little as $5 a month. It's at patreon.com/fostercarenation. The links to everything are in the show notes in your podcast player or at fostercarenation.com. And, as always,
You are so super awesome. I think you guys are cool. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
Unparalleled Studios.